Well, good morning, everybody, to another Sports Community live stream. I'm Steve Pallas, and today I'm joined by Cameron Ustalin, which must mean, Cameron, that it is Esport Friday. Welcome to you.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Yes, very exciting Esports Friday. And today, not necessarily picking one topic, but looking at all the topics, which should be fun to go through as we, I guess, celebrate 20 episodes of Esport Friday.
Yeah, surprising, isn't it? 20 episodes, and
5 months.
We've only just touched the surface, really. And I like the idea of after 10 weeks just taking a breath and reflecting, because what we learn in episode 11, 12, 13, we then learn things in 14, 15, 16 that put those in new context. So it's good to go back and have a look at what we've learned and the journey that we're on, which is still got no structure. We're just bouncing around from topic to topic, but we will get there on that. But so take us through the last 10 weeks, which is 2.5 months. My God.
Yeah. The last 5 months, 2.5 months of the last 10 weeks. Yeah, it's crazy how fast it's flown. So first off, let's just remind everybody, there's a link in the description. And if you want to go back and check out the playlist, Esports Friday, you can watch them all. They're in reverse chronological order. So you'll get the most recent video first, and you can go back and check out all of the episodes that we've done on esports. So if there's something that we talk about today that you want to go back and have a look at, you can go back through the whole list and check them all out, all 19 episodes plus today's. But we go back all the way to week 10, which was the week following the last review we did. We did one in week 9 as well. And we talked about what gaming content looks like. We looked at people like Laserbeam, Loserfruit, and a number of others. And I was just having a look at the numbers. And when we spoke about Laserbeam, he was the 3rd most popular YouTuber in Australia, and he's managed to crawl his way up into the 2nd spot. So there's been progress on his front in the last 2.5 months as well. We looked at a number of things that week, as well as celebrating, I might remind everybody, the announcement of the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, which was also 2.5 months ago. So how time has flown. But yeah, we looked at a whole bunch of different content avenues, and we spoke about how elite sporting organizations and bodies in Australia weren't necessarily using their content well, perhaps as a conversation piece. So I think maybe I made some outlandish claims that people like Collingwood were using their YouTube platform quite poorly, and maybe they needed to learn from some of these other content creators.
Yeah, I think that was an outlandish claim, but it's a big statement. But I think when we look at it, we keep bouncing from traditional to esport. I think the more we learn about it, the more we kind of recognise the way that traditional sports clubs or elite sports clubs are kind of operating at the moment is more a cookie cutter approach, if you like, and there's a lot of things that we can bring into that. Really exciting. We've got over the last couple of weeks, we've got a team of 4 interns from Holmes Glen Uni coming in, and so one of the things that we'll do, Cameron, is we'll set them the challenge of getting us an interview. Let's see if we can't see how good these see how good these interns are at tracking down interviews, and let's see if we can't get Laserbeam on the show, or someone in the top 10 at least from the Australian list.
I think getting someone like Laserbeam on the Esports Friday, that would be a coup, to use a word that probably does not convey the weight that it should.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, but let's not let reality stand in the way of the ambition of our interns.
Indeed, no, there's no one too high. So week 11. Oh, actually, no. Just before I move on, I thought just on the topic that you raised, I think one of the approaches that a lot of Australian elite sporting clubs have is perhaps that their YouTube and their social media channels are an extension of their membership. They service their members through those, so they're not necessarily thinking global with these sorts of platforms. They're thinking local. So it's not necessarily the wrong choice to make, but I think you can tell that through looking at their content, that when you look at what they're doing and what they're putting out there, it's more about trying to continue to add value to their members rather than trying to find other people. So I thought that that's something to add as well.
I think that's an incredibly valuable point. And I think, and that's one of the things that I've realized through this journey is that, and if let's move it away from, say, Collingwood and down to even the local sports club of whatever town and whatever sport, is that the world, we no longer need to think local. We can be thinking global, even though we're a community sports club. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's a couple of reasons for it. One is the people that come through our doors are global. Anyway, they've come through our doors and they might be in all over the world. And the other side of the coin is if we create great content and we create great engagement and great stories and give people a reason to follow us, it doesn't matter where we're located in that regard. And so I think I think that's a really great point, is that esports has shown us that we don't need to be limited by geography. We need to be limited by we're only limited by great content.
Yeah, and the quick adapters to that have obviously been the big clubs around the world because they've been able to throw money and resources at it. But there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that and having that approach. So it's a good mentality to have.
Well, and you're right there, because the big brands, if you like, in the Forbes top 10 most valuable teams, the Manchester Uniteds, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, help me out with the 3 or 4 European soccer clubs, Barcelona,
Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Manchester United, etc., etc.
They're just as much media companies now as they are sports companies. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something we can take from that.
Week 11, we had a good chat with Chris Smith from Big Esports. You've been developing a relationship with Chris, so maybe you can recap the discussion that we had with Chris.
Well, I mean, Chris is like your good self, Cam. He was been a long-term participant in the industry, if we call gaming an industry, which I think we can, as a gamer, as a tournament director, as an agent, et cetera, et cetera. And Chris was talking to us about the fact that traditional sports clubs and more so associations are looking at esports and extending the products and offerings that they offer their community. So I found that really, really interesting. And he took us through a couple of examples that he's working on at the moment, one with a state sporting body and also a local association. So I think what this is predicting the future, Cam, that let's just say 10 years time, but well before that, is that those that are coordinators of sporting activity will be doing physical sporting activity, virtual sporting activity, and a combination of both. I think, and again, probably throwing in the concept of augmented reality in there as well somewhere, which I think is coming at 1,000,000 miles an hour as well. So, but I guess the discussions with Chris showed what was happening now. You know, where our local sports competitions and administrators are actually thinking about esport, and the same in those discussions with Nigel Smart at Adelaide Crows, and it's slightly different context, but very much community sport driven.
Yeah, absolutely. And then week 12, we had a bit of a case study about one of my favorite drivers and one of my favorite characters in Formula One is Lando Norris, and very excited next year to have Lando teaming with Daniel Ricciardo, and that's just going to be an absolute joy fest for the content creators in the world, I tell you what. But yeah, looking at how someone who is a bit of he's the new generation coming through, and how he's pushing an entire industry to change, and how he's driving change from inside out and pushing Formula One to really recognize that the way they've done things is not necessarily the way forward, and how gaming can bring new people to an old sport, a sport that's just celebrated their 70th year. How the future is gamers. It's about engaging with a whole new type of person, and Lando, as a big part of that, is driving that change and making people and ambassadors of the sport and the drivers of the sport, the characters of the sport, more accessible and more friendly and more approachable. And I think that was a really great example of that.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the traditional way is wrong. It's the traditional way of engaging an audience engages a traditional audience.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if we want to have a larger audience, then the groups that we're not engaging at the moment, we need to engage differently, because otherwise they would already be engaged. So that's what we're learning from esport is, and those that are participating, and is how to connect with that audience, grow that audience, engage that audience, feed that audience, and as we're going to see later on, and that audience will return that in spades by commercially supporting you if you give them the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all about finding that next avenue. We're never talking here about changing the way you do things and just binning everything you've done that works.
Yeah.
It's about finding new ways to enhance yourself, enhance your club, enhance your product. Week 13 and 14 were looking at new revolutions in some spaces, looking at virtual products like virtual golf and virtual cycling. So for week 13, we looked at virtual golf and the tournament that had just been run around Australia, the first ever professional, I suppose, virtual golf competition. Run through X Golf, who are about to launch their own virtual league as well, which is pretty cool from them. And week 14 was looking at the virtual tour and how people were engaging with that, and those sorts of I guess they're kind of the congruent products. They're not necessarily a game. They're not necessarily in the real world. They're sort of blending the two worlds together with golf and cycling.
Yeah. Like again, and that's that convergence that I think we're going to see more and more of with augmented reality coming and virtual reality, where we step into a world and we might be physically playing in that world, but that world is virtual. So I think these are the first steps to that process.
And speaking of augmented reality, we in week 15 we had a look at how the Major League Baseball was planning to use, and have since been using on one of the television networks at least, pretend fans using a gaming engine, using the Unreal Engine, which we had a look at, which has been getting a little bit of news lately as they have quite an open spat with Apple in the Apple Store. But so looking at how gaming and sport is becoming even more connected by using a game to help enhance the entertainment quality of a top level sport like Major League Baseball. And all of this is, again, that augmented reality that you just touched on, where you're taking something that's real and you're enhancing it with something that's, well, I don't want to say not real, but something that's virtual, to enhance that experience.
Is Unreal the makers of Fortnite?
Unreal is the engine. Epic is the company that owns it. So Unreal is owned by Epic Games, which is the makers of Fortnite and a number of other things. They also own Rocket League as well, which they didn't create. They purchased after the fact, but they now are the operators and owners of Rocket League as well. A number of esports that Epic Epic Games have been running as well. I think they may even be League of Legends, but I'm not 100% sure on that. They do have a number, so they're all over the place with that.
And that, as you called it, a spat, I think it's quite a significantly more than a spat with Apple. It's really about revenue sharing, isn't it? Because now the numbers that are going through the platforms are so massive that there's the revenues are so large that people are willing to take on the biggest company in the world to change the landscape.
So I think it's also quite similar to what's happening with and I won't go into too much detail because it's a whole nother topic, but what's happening with Facebook and Google and the potential new laws that are being discussed. And it's sort of about control. It's not just revenue, but revenue obviously always plays a part in these discussions. But with Apple, it's that they control everything that comes and goes. And they more or less force people to give them a stake of the pie as well. So, a number of things that are going on there. I think Epic have probably been planning this for some time. I don't think this is something that they've just kind of thrown out today. I think they were kind of dropping breadcrumbs, and they've got a long-term plan here to try and get a little bit of control back from Apple. So it's a very interesting thing that's happening there.
And that's no different to physical shop fronts actually taking on the landlords, say the Westfields of the world, who take a cut of the revenue that comes in the door. So it's interesting what's happening at the moment about on this kind of control of eyeballs type scenario.
Week 16, we had a look at Play New Zealand, the pretend game that some thought maybe was a real game and didn't like it, or the virtual dive into New Zealand, which was partnered with Loserfruit, the Australian streamer, and they brought quite an interesting take on how to market to the gaming world and trying to blend that real world with what gamers are used to and that experience that they're used to. So a very clever initiative there by Tourism New Zealand, hoping to open the doors and the floodgates of gamers to come over to New Zealand once COVID restrictions end. So getting on the front foot there, and then, cop some criticism, but I think arguably will have been very successful, and hopefully they'll be able to show that in the numbers afterwards, because I thought it was a very, very creative and very clever campaign from Tourism New Zealand.
Look, and I wouldn't be surprised if the criticism is all part of the campaign, because they knew it wasn't as high tech as what the gamers are used to, but under the guise of all publicity is good publicity type scenario, the more they're getting negative feedback, the more it's staying relevant to that group. And it's not the point of the ad isn't about the quality of the gaming experience. It's about the
real world experience.
The destination, which that it shows brilliantly well. And so I think creating that little bit of tension when the ad came out might have actually been part of the strategy. Be interesting to have a look at the number of views, Cameron, if you got that up there of that YouTube channel, because I think from memory, when we showed it 3 or 4 days after it went live, it was 260,000 views. So
it had gone depending on the ad you look at. So the one that we were having a look at, that was 260.
Yeah, 1.2. So it's got 1 million more.
This one was 260, and it's now 500,000. And this one was about 500,000, and it's now 1.2 million. So yeah, it's been. I've seen it still cropping up even just the other day. So it's still running. But yeah, it's definitely say on terms of the numbers, it's been quite successful.
Yeah.
The week 17 discussion was about payment options and understanding the various monetization options available to you and to people who are developing on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and even Patreon. Ignore Mixer from the headline of this discussion, because Mixer has now become part of Facebook. But yeah, this article kind of breaks it down, and I might even throw it in the comments later, because I found this after the fact, and it has quite a good kind of culmination of all the different pros and cons of all the different platforms. So yeah, this was a big discussion about how you can monetize your club potentially on the various platforms and what's a good option for you. Yeah,
and again, what we've been learning from the gamers is that people value the content, people value the relationship, and they value the opportunity to interact during the contest. And from a club point of view, when you look at that, well, there's not a lot of cost to that. Like in tradition, and we're looking at a club perspective, we're thinking if we want people to give us money, we've got to give them something in return. And therefore, if we're thinking sponsors, signage on fences, logos on uniform and things like that. But I think what we've learned from gamers is the value of our content, the value of the stories of the people, the value of the mistakes. Loser Fruit, I think from memory, it was Loser Fruit creates a huge audience by just compiling different video types of, errors and issues and fails and all sorts of things. So, there's what they've shown us is the value of the content. And again, as I keep trying to understand this, I bounce it to the real world, as opposed to the virtual world. And that's no different to, in one regard, street art, where we walk along, say, in Melbourne back in the day when we weren't restricted, South Bank Boulevard, and there's lots of street performers. If we stop and we watch, then typically we will throw some money into the hat. And i.e., that's us valuing that content. It's just a different platform. And I think it's really taught me that if we can create good enough content that people want to engage with and invest the most valuable thing that they've got, which is time, then potentially they're quite willing to give away the second most valuable thing, theoretically, or another valuable thing, which is their money, to ensure that they get continued access to that valuable thing, that thing they value, which is the content.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of build it and they will come as well. If you provide an option for people to provide a monetary offering to you, then they will. If you don't, then they can't. So that's the difference, isn't it? If you provide an option on Facebook where people can donate to your club, then maybe nobody takes it up, but maybe people do. If you don't offer that option, then people can't. So even the people who want to can't. So you're not opening that door. So it's not necessarily about creating something that people will just jump on in droves, but it's about not doing it and, enabling the people who want to be able to help and finding all of those options for your club, because there's a whole bunch of different ones.
Well, I think that's a valid point. Well, sorry, it's a valid point. And we had that experience in one of our early live streams where someone from the Twitch platform came on and said, "Hey, how do we give you guys money?" And this was very early on, and I'm looking at him going, "Dude, I don't even know what you're talking about. Why would you give us money?" But now I understand that comment that came through while we were live streaming. How do I support what you're doing? Because we think what you're doing is valuable. So, that's a very valuable lesson, I think.
And the last two were both kind of topical of each other. Week 18 and week 19. Week 18, we looked at meta esports and the high school esports tournaments and pathways. And then last week, week 19, we looked at the university options as well. So having some dives into the realm of pathways, which I think people like Chris and Nigel have both spoken about in the interviews we've done with them, about trying to open up some of these pathways to not only provide the opportunities for gamers, but to also identify talent, which is something that is still developing in the gaming space. And I think that's we're talking about things that we can borrow from the gaming world and bring into club world. I think that's something that club world can really offer to the gaming world. The community clubs are all about pathways, especially in the junior clubs. If you can bring that knowledge to the gaming world, I think you could really be part of the trendsetters and really at the forefront of the gaming world if you can help open those opportunities. So,
well, and I think that's from Nigel Smart, isn't it? Through the creation of Meta High School, was esport was creating that pathway, which then really gives them first look at all the new talent coming through and to a degree first access to them. As a consequence of last week's session, and I haven't told you about this yet, Cam, but our colleague Amanda Vanderwall up in sunny Queensland, where you're allowed to roam the streets without restriction. As a good friend in QUT that looks after the sports and esports there. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we might be able to get someone from QUT to come and talk about the university's perspective, but also one or more of the students to come on that are talking about the scholarship and that side of it. So that'll be really exciting to have those discussions as well.
Yeah, very exciting world, and still quite new, quite developing. QUT's only been doing that for a few years, and they were the first. So yeah, very new world.
Yeah, very good.
So that's 20 weeks, or the last 10 weeks. Quite an in-depth look. We've got a lot there that we've talked about. We've gone from I feel like we've gone around the world about 16 times. So it's if you've found something that's interesting, make sure you head back. The playlist is on Facebook. There's a link down below. You can check out all the episodes if you want to have a deeper look at anything that we've talked about today.
Yeah, fantastic. And if there's things you'd like us to explore, then put that into the comments and we will definitely do that. Where we'll head over the next 10 weeks is I guess what we've used the first 20 weeks to do by and large, a couple of guests here and there, but really an intro look. So what we'll look to do is really ramp up the interviews now, Cam, and continually get different people from different perspectives to share their thoughts, their ideas, so we can learn from them. And we'll continue this journey on Esport Friday, which I can't believe it's been 20 weeks. I look forward to it every week. I really do. And I learn every session, and even just taking the time to reflect for half an hour now might seem a little bit self-indulgent, but I think it's very, very, very worthwhile and very important. So nothing else for you this week, Cam?
Oh, geez. How much more do you want?
No, I'm just making sure, because you've got lots of tabs up there and I never know what we've covered and what we haven't. So till next week, another exciting week of sports community live streams. Just taking a couple of weeks of just taking a few days off during the week and just having the live streams where we've got guests for the next couple of weeks, and then we'll ramp them back up start of October as we have a little bit of a break ourselves. So, because as you said, Cam, we've been going for 20 weeks flat out live streaming every day, and so we'll just take a couple of weeks just to have a couple of days off during the week, and then get stuck straight back into it in October. So, I'm Steve Pallas. He's Cameron Ustel, and he's our esport expert. I'm the novice that's going on a journey, and I thank you for being part of that journey and part of our sports community.